zombie virus had swept over the earth, turning once thriving cities into desolate graveyards. The human race was nearly erased, but somehow a woman named Claire had made it through the chaos. When the outbreak hit, she took refuge in the sewers, surviving in the darkness for several days. Eventually, hunger became unbearable. She climbed out of her underground hiding spot and wandered through the ruins of a once ordinary suburban neighborhood. Inside an abandoned house, she found a can of peanut butter. It was expired, but she had no choice. Almost instantly after eating, she vomited violently. As she wiped her mouth and tried to regain her composure, she realized a group of survivors had been watching her the entire time. They captured Claire and took her to their leader, who stepped forward and assaulted her in front of the others. Just as another man prepared to take his turn, the sound of nearby zombies pierced the air. The group immediately scattered and abandoned Claire where she lay. Soon after, the zombies arrived, swarming into the house. Claire, barely able to stand, hid behind a door and didn't move a muscle. She waited until the groans and dragging footsteps faded into the distance. She then crept out slowly, but the blood smeared on her skin was enough to lure the zombies back. One of them charged toward her before she could react. Just when all hope seemed lost, a stranger appeared, lured the creature away, and decapitated it without hesitation. Though he had saved her life, Claire couldn't trust him. After what she'd just endured at the hands of the thugs, trust was no longer something she could afford. But the man, whose name was Freddie, knew she wouldn't survive another night alone. So he asked her to come with him and travel together. Claire hesitated, but eventually followed him. Gradually, they began to share pieces of their past. Freddie revealed that he had worked for a government agency, which gave him early access to disturbing reports of violent attacks in major cities. Realizing how serious the threat was, Freddie rushed to find his daughter, but he was too late. What had once been his child now stood barefoot in broken glass, unbothered by the pain. The moment he entered, she attacked him. He fled into another room, but whatever had infected her had given her unnatural strength. With his heart breaking, he pulled the trigger and ended his daughter's suffering. Freddie almost turned the gun on himself, but the gun was out of ammo. With nothing left, he packed what little he had and began walking alone until he crossed paths with Claire. The next morning, they continued their journey, moving through deserted homes and shattered neighborhoods. Freddie avoided the zombies whenever possible, but if one came too close, he eliminated the threat without hesitation. To avoid larger groups of infected, they followed mountain trails through the forest. They ventured deeper into the forest, moving cautiously and staying alert. Suddenly, a faint noise ahead made Freddie halt abruptly. They both hid underbrush as two other survivors walked past, unaware of their presence. Eavesdropping on their conversation, Freddie realized that a trading outpost was nearby, a chance to negotiate for supplies, especially clean water. He followed them from a safe distance until they reached a cave where guards stood on duty, with weapons in hand. When Freddie asked if they could barter, one of them went inside to inform their leader. Moments later, a man stepped out and Claire instantly froze. She recognized him. It was the same man who had assaulted her. With a cruel grin, he suggested that Freddie trade Claire in return for supplies. Without hesitation, he turned to leave, but the thugs blocked their path. Freddie then pulled his gun and fired, dropping several of the thugs before they could react. He then handed Claire the gun, a silent offer for revenge. But Claire hesitated. Her finger hovered over the trigger but wouldn't move. Freddie didn't argue, and together they went deeper into the cave. There, in the shadows, they found a woman barely alive, battered and bruised by the same men they'd just confronted. Claire stood still, silent, but something shifted inside her. She then took the gun from Freddie and delivered justice herself. Days later, while navigating rugged terrain, they reached a towering rock wall. The only path was through a narrow, pitch-black cave. With only a glow stick to light their way, they pressed forward, nerves tight with every step. As they neared the exit, a shadowy figure appeared in the cave's mouth. Freddie rushed forward and emerged into the sunlight, only to see a small girl standing alone on a hillside. He moved toward her, but before he could reach her, two men emerged from hiding and captured them. They were taken to a sterilization room, scrubbed, disinfected, and medically examined. Once cleared, they stepped into a surprisingly survivor settlement, which had been built by a man named Hayden. People survived here by farming and hunting, and guards stood at every entrance. After hearing their story, Hayden welcomed Freddie and Claire warmly, and they were invited to stay. For the first time in ages, Claire felt safe. She quickly noticed that most of the residents, especially the women around her age, seemed genuinely happy. One of them, Deirdre, quickly befriended Claire, even preparing a comfortable tent for her. Freddie, however, remained suspicious. Later, he pulled Claire aside and quietly revealed his plan. They would leave that night under the cover of darkness. He suspected that something sinister hid beneath the calm surface, but Claire wasn't ready to give up so easily. She begged him to stay just a few days to truly observe the place before rushing to leave. That evening, the community gathered for dinner. Hayden delivered an uplifting speech about unity and family, drawing smiles from everyone around, but Freddie listened with quiet skepticism. Later, as Claire headed toward her tent, Freddie intercepted her. He urged her once again to leave with him, but Claire had already started to let her guard down since for the first time in ages she felt safe. Their conversation turned into a heated argument and eventually Freddie gave up. He slung his bag over his shoulder and walked into the wilderness. Claire remained behind and gradually settled into its structured way of life. She found genuine comfort in the community, especially forming a strong bond with a woman named Tina. Until one afternoon, the little girl from earlier gave a faint, dry cough. The reaction was immediate. People nearby stiffened, their smiles vanished, and silence fell like a heavy curtain. Later, Tina found Claire in private and warned her to be careful, though she didn't explain why. The next day, Hayden approached Claire with his usual charisma, offering to show her more of the settlement. As he spoke glowingly of the family he'd built, his touch lingered too long on her arm. Claire recoiled as memories of past abuse flashing through her mind and she pulled away. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. Then Tina slipped into her tent and begged Claire to run before it was too late. But before either could move, Deirdre stepped into the tent's entrance. Claire barely had time to react before strong arms seized her and pulled her from the tent. She fought back, but they overpowered her and tied her up inside a plastic holding cell. It was then that the horrifying truth hit. Hayden wasn't the leader he pretended to be. He was a manipulative predator. Every woman in the camp was considered as his property. Claire had rejected him, so had Tina, and worse, Claire had shown signs of illness. Meanwhile, deep in the wilderness, Freddie sensed someone following him. He drew his gun and his pursuer revealed himself as one of Hayden's men, sent to kill him. That confirmed Freddie's worst fears that Claire was in danger. Without hesitation, he returned to save her. Freddie arrived just in time and burst into the plastic shelter only to find Claire drenched in gasoline. Without hesitation, he lunged forward and slashed Hayden's throat with his knife. At the same time, Claire broke free and strangled Deirdre with the ropes still binding her hands. They ran and didn't look back, but Claire's condition rapidly worsened. The infection had begun to take hold, and she only had hours left. Knowing the transformation was inevitable, Freddie tied Claire to a chair and watched helplessly as the life drained from her eyes. Claire was the first person he'd truly bonded with since the outbreak, and now, like everyone else he'd cared for, she was slipping away. Claire begged Freddie to end her life before the virus consumed her entirely. Freddie, who had once made the impossible decision to take his own infected daughter's life, now faced the same unbearable choice again. Shaking with grief, Freddie raised his gun and delivered a merciful shot to her head. He then opened the metal door to the outside world and walked straight toward the rising sun, carrying nothing but pain and silence.